Hello everybody, welcome to the Lowdown. Michael Smith, and today we're going to answer 3 questions about Silicon Valley Bank's meltdown. And where does that leave us now? So what happened? Well, I'll tell you in a simplified word, lack of diversification. One of the rules of investing we talk about all the time is making sure that we're well diversified. SVB was not well diversified. A lot of their deposits were tech startups. So that's number 1, lack of diversification of their customer base. Number 2, on the collateral side, most all banks, as a result of zero interest rate policy, have been forced to hold longer dated collateral, so longer dated bonds. So as many of us know, last year, bond prices fell. Why? Interest rates were starting to rise. So as a rule of interest rates, as interest rates go up, the price of the bond declines. So if you think about it for a minute, if you have longer dated collateral, so the longer the maturity, the further the fall, most all banks are in this category, and especially SVB, their collateral fell in value. So at the same time, you have depositors and people that are taking money out of the bank. So as a matter of fact, just to give you a quick number, in March alone, out of all the banks, $286 billion exodus in deposits. Why? Well, as you probably know, you saw yields for the first time in the last 10 years. You could get 4 to 5% in yields versus your money markets that have not caught up with where interest rate payments are. So naturally, what do you think is going to happen? People are flying to where they can get paid, and the banks are now suffering from that. And so they were forced. So SVB was forced to basically sell its long-dated collateral, its bonds, at losses. So what happened? It caused a liquidity issue for the bank. Now, that's somewhat been resolved, as we know. It's being bought, so that's been somewhat contained to some degree. But now the bigger question, is there a contagion risk to the other banks? Well, almost all banks are facing this issue. They all hold longer dated collateral. That longer dated collateral has declined in value, and they're all losing depositors. Now, the good news is most of the regional banks outside of SVB, they're well diversified. Also, most of the depositors are well within the FDIC limits. So I think most of these banks, and now with some of the remedies by the Fed, I think to the degree this has been somewhat contained. However, we're not out of the woods yet. So another question I'm getting consistently because of what's happened, and I'm running into this everywhere, are people are asking me, should you withdraw or should they take their money out of the banks? The answer is no. Stop it. You're adding to the issue. You're adding to the problem. Number 1, make sure wherever your money is, you're within and below the FDIC limits. That is the number 1 thing you need to do. So that leads us to our third question, the Federal Reserve. What now? Jerome Powell started the year, number 1 goal, inflation, they're going to break inflation. And as we know, asset prices have suffered. Real estate, stocks, bonds, just about everything. The mentality by Jerome Powell and the Fed is that they're going to keep raising rates until something breaks. Well, guess what? Something finally broke. And now we've seen the response to that. The question is, does the Fed keep going from here? We clearly see the market doesn't like it. And the Fed basically is telling us they're going to continue until they get inflation back to 2%. If you think about the Federal Reserve and their ability to forecast, their record is terrible. What has got a great record is the bond market. And the bond market is now telling us that the Federal Reserve is going to have to cut rates at some point here in the future. So that is what I would believe. The 800-pound gorilla in the room has always been the bond market and one of the best forecasting tools. So that's kind of where the Federal Reserve is now, is not just so much their dual mandate. Remember, dual mandate is inflation, which is what they're targeting, unemployment, but the third one that's probably hidden from many is price stability, and that's what's coming under fire right now. I think you see a shift from inflation to price stability here in the near term, and that's what the bond market is telling you. Long story short, don't panic, trust your plan. I'm Michael Smith, and thank you for listening to The Lowdown.